been self-employed since I was 20. I think there's an army of particularly young guys that get seduced by the make a million in the next 4 years, pay your mortgage off in the next 6 years kind of thing. There is, in any industry, there is no get rich quick. It's easy to turn £1 million into £2 million. To turn nothing into £1 million does not happen quickly.
So around 70% of our viewers haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel. If you can do this, it really helps us, it gets us reach and it gets us better guests on the podcast. So drop us a subscribe, let's jump into the podcast and don't forget to like it. Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of the PSN Pop Up Podcast. We've been absolutely buzzing for this one, to be fair. I reached out to Davy Hutton, as I'm sure you will all know, recently, just on the off chance that he would accept coming on to the podcast. I genuinely didn't think you would. I actually looked at the message when I messaged you, that big long message, that size, and I was like, he read it, he's not wrote back. 24 hours later, you wrote back and you says no bother. So honestly, really appreciate you coming on, mate.
It took me 24 hours to read it.
I noticed when
I opened my heart up and everything when I was like,
showed
Davey,
me
please.
his back goes right up. I'm just not just a sorcerer and all that stuff. It was
That's the first thing I wrote. So it was like, I wrote something about, guess what, I'm a property sorcerer, you know. So it was just, because I'm
not one of the standard dicks.
No, that's pretty much what I was saying. So, so we've got Davy Hutton on, buzzing about this chat. We've actually been talking quite a bit just before we started recording.
Davy Hutton's not buzzing, I'll tell you. You know that. Just the way you said that, we've got Davy Hutton on buzzing. Davy Hutton's not buzzing.
Yeah, guilt tripped into coming on. Yeah, we'll just kick in. Normally we sort of have an A4 bit of paper with loads of questions and stuff like that. We just thought that's not the way to do it with you. I've watched you, Matt's watched you on numerous different sort of podcasts and stuff like that, and you're just, just get a right good chat. It's been brilliant sort of watching you on them. So I guess we can just kind of jump into, obviously touching on the sort of sourcing of the property sourcing of the world, the property education stuff of the world. I know we kind of touched on it a bit there. But it's just good to kind of get your thoughts on that, because for me, I said to Matt, I was like, that'd be brilliant to get Davy Hutton on the podcast one day. That's what brilliant. I don't think he would do it, but it'd be brilliant because I know he fucking hates saucers.
Yeah.
Now we obviously still come.
Rip it at us.
we obviously do come from a sourcing background, and we still do that bread and butter day to day, as you do as well. Do you know what I mean? You're the first ones. You were one of the first to ever do it. So what's your thoughts on all that sort of stuff in industry now?
Well, the whole estate agency world is changing. To be honest, when I started doing this, I thought by now there would be no such thing as estate agents. I thought it would have gone the way of travel agents. I thought by now you would be selling your property yourself on an online portal, and before I could see your property, I'd need to watch an advert for Coca-Cola or something, and it would be an advertising generated thing. Yeah. And as yet, that's not happened. It will happen.
Do you think, eh?
Yeah. I think that's really what Purple Bricks were kind of heading towards before they went bust. But they're just a little bit too early for it. I mean, if Rightmove decided tomorrow to become an estate agent,
interesting, actually. Yeah.
Everybody's finished. I think there's an army of particularly young guys that get seduced by the make $1 million in the next 4 years, pay your mortgage off in the next 6 years kind of thing. There is, in any industry, there is no get rich quick. Mm-hmm. It's easy to turn £1 million into £2 million. To turn nothing into £1 million does not happen quickly.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of young guys seduced by money. Mm-hmm. And it comes across when they're because obviously they all work off the same business model. They must be, I would imagine, trained at the courses as to how you do it. You go out there, you put out your videos, you take the flack that comes with it, you double down on it, you offer the world, you promise the world.
So was that what it was when did you first start that, with the quick sale stuff? Was that about 10 years ago or so?
No, 2007.
Was it?
Really, we started as Glasgow Property Auctions.
So was it like similar then? You go out, you do your Facebook leads, your Facebook ads, you get your leads. You go to it wasn't really.
No, it was completely different. There was Facebook was in its infancy then. You guys have obviously grown up with that. It wasn't like that at all. It was, your website was a relatively new thing
Yeah.
at that point. But we really, when we started off, the market was in turmoil, the banks had crashed, people had portfolios they couldn't get rid of. The estate agency world got found out as being populated by pretty girls picked to look good in a shop window that actually didn't know a lot about property, but knew quite a lot about talking down to people and being condescending, that kind of way that estate agents are spoken about. And we, if you like, brought a knowledge to the market of how you could get rid of properties. We became initially a clearance centre. We had a few auctions that we did for the GSPC at that time. And when I was coming from a background of doing lighthouses and castles and windmill type properties, I was doing telly stuff, and then it changed. Everything changed overnight. 2007, 2008, it really hit here, but 2007 you could see it coming. And I was watching the news for a long time, what was happening in America. And I was old enough and wise enough to know that what happens in America will happen here. We were all talking about the subprime. Nobody knew what the subprime was. I did. And I had a friend who was talking about setting up an auction company, who sadly died very suddenly, aged 39. And the people that he was going to do the auction company with came to me and said, would you be interested in fronting this business? So I went to have a meeting with them in the big boardroom, coffee and biscuits and all that kind of thing. And this was about their 5th or 6th meeting. And they had this idea that one guy was in mortgages, so he would get the repossessions coming from the banks. Another guy was an estate agent. He would sell the properties on the open market. Another guy was an investment guy. He would sell it to his high net worth clients. They would buy the properties, and they wanted me to front it, basically. So I listened to the meeting, and basically what they all wanted to do was to put a couple of grand into the pot and make £1 million back out. And it doesn't work like that. And I've been involved in businesses all my life. I've been self-employed since I was 20. I know how accounts work. I know how business structures work. And I'd said to them, look, I'm listening to your plan, and in theory it all works. But I tell you right now, you will not go to the Royal Bank of Scotland and say, give me your repossessions, and they'll say, okay. Because that's controlled by structured lending services, and structured lending services are based in London, and they're the size of a small country. And they're not just going to give it to a guy because he happens to sell mortgages on the Royal Bank of Scotland's behalf. And it's going to take a lot of work, and you're all going to have to put in major effort. And then one by one, they kind of backed out, with the exception of Ian Williamson, who's now Ivy Property in Glasgow. Ian's a cracking guy, a lot of time for him. And basically him and I went and did it. And it was big default. I was left kind of holding it. It wasn't really something I planned to do, but I knew it was something that I had the knowledge and ability to do. So that was where it started. And then from there, everything just evolves. You're looking at a market that's disposal is the most important thing. That then changes into, as the market improves, it changes into straight estate agency. So auctions go out of favour, straight estate agency comes back into favour. Whereas at that time, auctions was the only way you could get rid of properties. You couldn't get mortgages, it was cash buy only. And you evolve as you're going. Then it becomes, well, maybe we could offer a price to buy somebody's property if it doesn't sell on the open market. And then you find out that there are people who don't want to go in the open market for various reasons. But it was never, for me, it was never about stealing somebody's house. It was a buy it now price before second property taxes and things like that became a thing.
Yeah, totally.
So you could do it almost like we buy any car. At that point, you could say, well, it's £100,000 on the open market, I'll give you 90 for it. And you can make yourself £6,000 or £7,000 out of it. You can't do that anymore.
Totally.
So a different world that we live in, but it is a constant evolution, if you
What
like.
would you say is your buy price now then? If you used to be able to offer sort of 90 on 100 on something that's 100, what would you be in at now with all the costs and fees, etc.?
You're looking at it now and saying, well, there's £6,000 in second property fees there. There's legals to buy it. There's legals to sell it. There's a home report to sell it, and you have to keep the property for 6 months before you can sell it on. So straight off the bat, there's £12,000 coming off of that.
Yeah.
That's £88,000.
Yep.
And you're not doing this for £5,000.
Yeah.
You're not sitting out that amount of money to make £5,000. And when you explain that to people, they understand.
Yeah.
But most people don't understand. Joe Public doesn't understand about
No, 100%.
6%
Yeah.
taxes and things like that. And for me, it's very easy because I can say to them, it's not the route for you.
Yeah.
And here's the reason why it's not the route for you. And there's only a very, very small percentage of people that phone up that say, I want you to buy my property, where it is the right move for them.
Yeah.
Now, if that's all you do is buy properties off of people, it's your job to get that property for as low a price as you can get it. But it's not all I do. And it's not what I want it to be.
Yeah.
So for me, buying somebody's property is very much the last option.
Yeah.
It's not the first. And obviously it's the option that makes me the most amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
But I was always long game focused. I was always focused on people coming back and saying thanks.
Yeah.
Or he did the right thing by me, or because they tell somebody else. And then, social media obviously has got a massive exposure in how you publicise yourself. But in the long game, word of mouth is much more important than anything else.
I totally agree. And that's something we did speak about. We touched on before. It's like you are playing the long game. I feel like now there's a lot of people just in for the quick £3,000, or the low ball offer just to try and get the quick money. Like this is, you're trying to build a business here. You know what I mean? And that's obviously
If you're smart,
yeah. Because sourcing, I still 100% believe in sourcing. It will always be an aspect to my business. I think it's great, but it's seen as entry level into property. You can go do a course, or you don't need to do a course. You just start doing it, and then it's all about you need to get the quick money, the quick. But where is the vision to see that you want to build a business and it's going to be long term and you want it to be sustainable and stuff like that? Has to come for your reputation, I think.
Totally.
You've got to be honest with people.
Yeah. when
you're starting off, you cannot have the lump sums of money to buy people's properties.
Yeah.
It's just not, unless you're a millionaire to start with, you can't do it. And what I don't like is people being disingenuous or not being honest with people. Because if somebody wants you to buy their property and they want you to buy it quickly, there's a reason for it.
Mm-hmm.
Their lives are in turmoil. And if you get it wrong, their lives are screwed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it depends whether that's important to you or not. And if it's important to you, you will have a long-term business. If it's not important to you, you're a flash in the pan because you'll get found out.
Yeah.
And quite a lot of the stuff that I pick up is people going out and saying, we'll buy your property. Then they can't buy the property. Or the person that they were, handing it off to couldn't come up with a mortgage.
Yeah.
And the thing gets delayed and delayed and delayed. And I pick it up and that person's getting repossessed next Thursday. And I've got to sort it out.
Yeah.
And I've got to speak to the banks and I've got to delay that process and everything for them because somebody couldn't do what they said they could do. You can't treat people like that.
Mm-hmm.
Be honest with them. Say to them, well, I'm not buying it, but I know somebody who is. People will accept that. If you're starting off, tell people you're starting off.
Yeah.
People are much more likely to have, a fondness for you. If you say, cards on the table, I've done a property course.
Yeah.
And now I'm looking to buy my first property. If you can help me out, help me out. People will.
Yeah.
When I say people will, they'll not flock to you because there's not there's not millions of them out there. But your hit rate will be the same as it is if you're saying, I'm a CEO, public speaker, keynote speaker. Fuck off.
Well, what's your thoughts on property education? Is that I never done any formal training and I wear it like a badge of honour, whereas David did do some and he's done really, really well out of it.
Did I tell you that, my message?
I worked it out from you. There's nothing wrong with the training.
Yeah.
Theoretically, the training is all good. The knowledge that you get is all good. Practically, it doesn't work in the real world.
Yeah.
Practically, you cannot buy £1 million worth of property with no money down. In the real world, if there is a way of doing it, I don't know what it is. Theoretically, there's a way of doing it, but practically there isn't.
Yeah.
You have to start slowly. You have to kind of start with £5,000 and try and double it into 10,
Yeah.
and then try and double 10 into 20, and 20 into 40, and 40 into 80. And the longer you go, the easier it becomes.
It's dead interesting that, because like when we were at that event as well with the trailer guy down south, it's like that's how these people start. That's how you probably started as well. And the people that are now very wealthy through property, it's like they started with a small pot and it just compounded because they'd done the right things, bought the right, invested in the right properties and stuff, and built that pot over years. Whereas now what we're sort of talking about as well is it's like they get rich quick and people want it now and they want to do 10 deals this month and stuff. Like, it doesn't work.
I mean, I'm not the brain of Britain. I'm not the sharpest tool in the box. I was fortunate that I was born at the right time for the property explosion.
Yeah.
So in theory, you could buy something for £50,000, you could fund £50,000, you could wait till it was 55, sell it, and you've made £5,000 out of nothing.
Yeah.
You can't do that anymore. But even when it was, you had to put £5,000 into it, you now owe £45,000. When the thing became £55,000, your £5,000 had become 10. If you see what
Yeah.
you see what I mean. So it was reasonably simple for me to do it at the time. It's a much more complicated thing now, and would I have been able to do what I do in this world? Probably not.
See, that's what I was going to ask you there, Nick, because they're interesting. Like, it was easier for you guys back then, without a doubt. But, not everybody done it. You still had to be switched on and make it work. But nowadays, it's like, it's a lot tougher. So where, right now, if you were starting out, how would you navigate that? To try and obviously be, wealthy and
the first thing you've got to do is start.
Yeah.
You have to have something of substance to start with. Mm-hmm. And like every other business, you start off slowly, you lose money, but you gain knowledge and you gain experience. And then, over a period of time, it compounds.
Yeah.
But nobody in this day and age is willing to start off slowly. It's not the way that everybody wants stuff now.
Yeah, totally, 100%.
And you need patience, and you need knowledge. You can only get so far on the internet. The internet is the Wild West. It's unregulated. You can go out, you can put out your video, you can lie through your teeth. But people sniff it, people sense it. Mm-hmm. They know when they're being lied. I cannot, for instance, go on the radio and say, I am the best estate agent in the world, even although I am. I can't go out and say it because it can't be proven.
Yeah.
I can't go and say I am the biggest. I am, I'm selling 10,000 properties a year, because I'm not. And you have to prove that. Right. But you can say it on the internet. And if you say nonsense, like I did Nick Bonte's podcast recently, and we're talking about it, that one of the companies that's out there saying, we've helped 3,000 landlords this year. Do the maths. 500 a month, 125 a week.
Yeah.
And I'm doing 4. And I've been doing it for 30 years.
Yeah.
People know that's not, I mean, what people are doing when they listen to that and say, 3,000 properties this year, we're halfway through the year, that's 6,000 landlords in the course of a year. Are there 6,000 landlords in the country? That's what Joe Public said. Now, there are 6,000 landlords, but that's...
See, that's another thing, because it's just something that I'd written down just in terms of marketing, right? Because we all know, I think we all know who you're referring to there, but it's, because your market is brilliant, right? So where is the sort of boundary to market, to try and get the business, to try, maybe put yourself out there a wee bit more, and you need to kind of say, maybe not so much lie, but maybe expand the truth or something like that. But whereas you've got these people that are saying 3,000 landlords and stuff like that, where it's just total bullshit.
Well, as I said to you earlier, authenticity is what you have to sell. You have to sell the real you. It's like, when you're young and you want to go out and meet a girlfriend. Mm-hmm. Girls can spot desperation at like 10 miles. But if you're just yourself,
Yeah.
but if you're out there with your Porsche keyring and all that kind of thing, people know it. They spot things, and what people really want to know is, who are you? Not who do you want to be or who are you pretending to be.
Yeah.
Who are you?
It definitely is. The people buy for people, innit?
Yeah.
This
Do you
industry,
care
that's
about
it.
me?
Yeah.
Do you care about my story? If you want to go out and meet a girl and talk at her, you're not going to get very far. You need to listen.
Yeah.
And that's when people tell you their story, you have to say, even if it's not in your best interests, you have to be able to say, this is how you sort this out. Because if you don't, you're a shark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really is that simple. And if you do it right, you will make money out of it, and they'll tell somebody else.
Yeah.
And that's how it spreads.
So what does that conversation look like for you when you go through that door and you meet with a seller? Or do you do most of it on the phone and you only go out? Because you were saying before you do sort of all your own viewings, which we thought was quite good.
Well, as I said to you before, I mean, when I had the opportunity to franchise Quicksale, because at the time the idea that we had was fairly unique. But if I go franchise it, I have to employ you guys to do my job. You're now paid a wage by me. You're targeted on numbers that are brought in. And therefore, the information that you're giving out is no longer authentic and it's no longer correct for the person selling the property. Whereas I can afford to walk away from something and know that I've done the right thing. I had one recently, actually, it was a lad that had been on the property course. He had a big 4-bedroom new build house, had a business that was franchise where the main company had decided how they were going to do the sale of their goods and were going to change from franchised operation into, I don't know, supermarkets or whatever. But overnight his business had changed. And instantly his world was coming tumbling down and he needed to sell his property. But I could go to him, listen to his story and say, that's not what you need to do. You need to speak to your bank. They'll give you a 3-month window on your mortgage. Speak to them about an interest-only mortgage and get yourself back up and running. You're not in the position that you think you're in, because the guy's got 2 kids, they're at school, he's in his dream house. And I could have taken that house on to sell, but it would have been the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And I'll guarantee that guy will speak to, 100 other people. And he'll say, Davy did the right thing by me. And it's important to me to walk. I mean, I walk away from that not thinking, lost a deal.
Yeah.
I walk away from it feeling good about myself.
Yeah.
And really that's why we should be in business, to feel good about ourselves. It's not about being a millionaire or a billionaire. It's about having the knowledge that people respect.
Yeah.
People's respect is worth, many millions.
Quite hard, probably. Because I do agree with that, but if you're at the start and the money is important because you're trying to grow your
gotta make a
business, you
wage,
know what I mean? Of course, so you're maybe more inclined to do the right thing by yourself rather than them a lot of the time, just to try and make your way through and get that money in the cash flow and grow your business.
Yeah, and I understand that as well. And you asked me the question earlier, like when I was young and starting off, did I think the same way? I was more ambitious, but I think I always had a level. Integrity was important to me.
Yeah.
How you're perceived is important. If you're the person out there that says, I don't give a fuck how people look at me, I don't give a fuck what they say about me. Yes, you do.
Yeah.
And you're telling lies right away. Because there's no point in having 10 million quid in name mates.
Aye.
And no respect. And particularly when you're in the game that we're in, it's very easy to be perceived as being the leech on society, being the pariah, the kind of preying on vulnerable people. Really, is that who you want to be?
No. Yeah.
Now, you can still buy somebody's property and say to them, I'm really sorry this is happening to you. But if I buy your property, this is how it works. There's 6% second property taxes, and there's legals to buy it, there's legals to sell it. My money's sitting out for 6 months. That's why you're taking the hit that you're taking. If you're going to inverted commas, steal somebody's house, steal the house by looking them straight in the eye and telling them how much money you're making off it.
Yeah.
Now, I bought one yesterday off a guy, which makes me sound like I'm buying millions of properties. I'm not, just by pure fluke. I bought one yesterday, and it's the first one in ages. But the company that he'd phoned initially, thinking it was us, because he'd Google quick sale, and then obviously everybody's got the quick sale words on their Google search, and they offered him 70 grand for his property. Now, the guy told me they'd offered him 70 grand for his property. At that point, I know I can buy his property for 71, but I know 80 grand is the right figure.
Yeah.
And that's what I paid him, 80 grand for it. I would love to have put it on the market for him, and his house probably would have got 110. And I told him that.
Yeah.
But there are specific reasons why that can't happen.
Yeah. And typically, what will you do with stock then? Something like that you buy in, will you tend to keep it, or will you trade it straight on? Will you do the work? What does that look like?
We tend to do the work and then put the property out right.
And do you sell them yourself through your agency?
Yes.
Do you? Interesting.
Yeah.
So do you have like a big portfolio yourself? I think you've got a castle and stuff like that, different assets.
Yes. I don't like to talk about the castle because I'm conscious you all don't have one.
Whereabouts is that?
It's in West Kilbride, Seamill.
Right.
Is that where you stayed, is it?
No, I live in Lochwinnock.
Right.
But when I was a kid, I wanted a castle, wanted to restore a castle. It wasn't like I wanted to be king of the castle. Just where I grew up, there was an old ruined castle that we used to play in.
Yeah.
And then when I got 18 or 19, I wrote the guy a letter that owned it, and his name was Professor McDowell, and he lived in Canada. And everybody knew who he was because he owned all the ground round about that the golf club was on and all that kind of stuff. And I wrote my letter saying, we used to play in that, going to sell me it. And the naivety of youth said at the time you could buy a Barrett box for 50 grand. So surely I must be able to rebuild that castle for 50 grand. That's just the simplistic way you think when you're young. And the guy wrote back and said, "Hi, Davy. Thanks very much for your letter. Go fuck yourself," kind of thing. And I used to tell the story like that. And then I owned a pub called the Howwood Inn, which is now the boarding house in Howwood. And I bought that as a property development. Made a mistake with it because I thought I can convert this into a house. It's the old kind of coaching inn type thing. Then found out it was listed not as a building, as a pub, as an inn. Mm-hmm. So the only thing it can be is a pub.
Right.
Yeah.
So having made the mistake of buying it, I thought, well, how hard can it be to, start this business up again and make the business work? And I became a publican, and it was great fun, and I loved it. And I learned so much out of doing it about people. But I'd built the business round about me. It was kind of Tom Cruise cocktail. It was throwing bottles about, and I didn't know how to throw bottles about. It was smash glass everywhere kind of thing. But it was one of these places where everybody looked at the bar with the bar staff, because that's where we were all just having fun. The music was blaring, and we were just young people having a carry on, Coyote Ugly type thing. Mm-hmm. And then I realised that a personality-based business is very difficult to sell because you can't sell it without you.
Yeah.
So we then had to make people, instead of looking at the bar, we wanted them looking that way. So we created a music pub. And we'd loads of good acts in there, the Silencers, the Dubliners, the Chaz and Dave were in a couple of times, and things like that. And I loved it. But that was another mistake that I'd made that you evolve in. You react to the mistakes that you make, you sort the mistakes out. Mm-hmm. And the hardest thing for anybody to do in any kind of business is start. It's dead easy to go on a property course and sit there with all your bits of paper and kind of like wee arrows coming out here, there and everywhere. But what you've got to do is find a property or buy a property. Find a property that you can ship on to somebody else, or you buy one, get your own mortgage on it, whether it's your principal residence and you're starting off that way or whatever. You have to start. And once you've started, if that direction's not right, you change course, but you end up away over here.
Yeah.
Which is probably a completely different place to what you're theoretical business plan said. It's all straight lines, and but when you're young, if you're doing things and you're having fun, money will follow if you're doing something right.
Yeah.
If you set out there that says, I'm going to earn £1 million, you have to work backwards from the £1 million. If you're going to go out there and say, do you know what, I'm going to be the best property person out there, or I'm going to be the best publican out there, then money follows. If you're giving people a good time or a good experience, money will follow. I'm not the cheapest guy out there for selling your house. But without blowing smoke up my own backside, I'm good at what I do.
Yeah.
And the girls that work for me are good at what they do. In fact, I'm very much the weak link in the whole thing, and
Do you have quite
and
a
they
big
tell
team?
me every day that I'm the weak link in the whole thing. And then every month I have to tell them that I own it, and that's how we all got on. But no, I've not got a big team at all. We've got 4.
See, that's another thing that I find dead interesting as well, because now I've just took on my second member of staff in my sourcing agency, part of my business. And I just feel like I don't really feel you need a big office quadruple the size of this with hundreds of salespeople. Like, you can still do and make a good living, build a good business that's going to make a lot of money, just with a sort of smaller team as well. I don't know.
Well, I mean, this office that we're sitting in is not my office. This is Finding Your Feet. This is the charity that we run. And again, this was an opportunity came up for this building. We only need 1 floor of it. There's 4 floors in the building. It's massive. So why don't we fill it full of other charities? Charities are not our competition. Other property people are not. I don't view you guys sitting here as being competition. It's very rare we'll be in the same deal. But charities then learn off each other. They cross-pollinate. They learn how to get grants. They then have longevity, because charities tend to be set up by people for the very best of reasons. Somebody's kids died, and they set up the charity in memory of that child, and it lasts as long as friends and family are willing to give money.
100%.
Yeah.
And very quickly that dries up because people can't afford to do that. But if you can teach them to do it right, and that longevity happens, and that kid's name is then immortal, they become like a more important person to the world than somebody who lived to 100. That's massive comfort for that family.
Yep.
It's just the right way to do it. So you become not a tuppence halfpenny charity, you become the charity that's doing it. And we learn off all these other charities as well. And I love that part of my life. I love the part of my life that says my sister and everything that happened to her. For those of you who don't know, my sister lost her hands and feet to sepsis, and then became the first person to get a double hand transplant a few years down the line. She's the showbiz personality, but she didn't choose it. Life threw this at her. And she's now a far more important person to the world than she ever was before this happened to her. And it's an important life lesson for all of us. When you're out there kind of cutthroat and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, life throws curveballs at you.
Yeah. What impact would you say that has had on you?
It's a question I've asked myself many times. It probably reinforced the who I wanted to be as opposed to who I was. I probably became much more conscious of maybe trying to help somebody out of a situation rather than walking away from it. I became less money orientated. I was never particularly money orientated, if I'm honest, but you want to be successful. And people tend to judge success as the money you've got, the pen that you write with, the car that you drive. And it's bollocks because everybody can fake it now on I don't know. I just kind of think I want to learn all the time. I want to learn new things. I want to have opinions that you challenge, that make me think, No, do you know what, Davy? You've got that wrong. I'm not scared to be wrong, because every single time that I'm wrong, I learn something.
Yeah.
And that's what you see on social media, where people will argue black is white because they don't want to be wrong. So there is that thing of the Rangers-Celtic game, you two are at opposite ends of the terraces, and your centre forward runs at your centre half who breaks his legs. Simultaneously, you're shouting send him off, and you're shouting never touched him, ref, took a dive. But we all saw the same thing with our eyes. We just processed it differently through our mouths. And in that situation, you're telling a lie, but you don't want to be wrong.
Yeah.
So you're going to argue all the way down the line. And that's what you see now with the Trump situation, or you see with the Boris Johnson situation, or Nigel Farage situation. People, you can't reason with people because they don't want to be wrong.
Yeah.
Very difficult situation just now.
So obviously you said you're not particularly money orientated, or at least now you're not, but what do you think's driven you to get to where you are in terms of buying lots of stuff, having successful businesses, things? Is it
Fear.
fear?
It's always been fear. It's always growing up with nothing. My dad started his business when I was probably 12, 14, something like that. And I remember being skint because my dad, he was a foreman in a workshop, bought a van, and he was an overall guy in a van, went out fixing trailers and lorries. And everything that he had was getting put into that, and attempting to get a second van and somebody working for him. But I remember having nothing. That's my formative years. I remember having nothing. And I'm not going back to that is really what's driven me. Where my young brother's 7 years younger than me and only remembers everything being okay.
Yeah.
So his perspective on things is much safer than mine. And to a degree, my son now is 18. And I can say to him, this might all disappear tomorrow. And he can understand what I'm saying, but he can't feel it.
Totally.
Because everything's always been good for him.
Yeah.
Food's always been there. You open the sweetie cupboard and there's stuff there. And it's a little bit like, I've said this many times, we can understand the slave trade, for instance, but you can't feel it because you're not black. And there was a situation happened in here. Girl that runs Finding Your Feet is Jewish, not practicing Jewish, but you're born Jewish if your mother's Jewish. And I'd said to her, I've got a number in my arm here, which is a girl that died in Auschwich. Years ago when I was doing telly stuff, I had this idea that if 6 million people adopted one person, found out who they were, nobody dies for no reason. So this was a long, long time ago. That's the way that I thought. I thought about legacy. I thought about who I wanted to be. I wanted to matter. That's really as easy a way as I could say. I wanted to matter. And I'd said to her that if the situation that happened in Nazi Germany happened now, here, I'm pretty sure I'm at a stage in my life where I would be the guy that stood up and said, no, not in my name. And quick as a flash, she said, there's your white privilege right there. And I'm straight on the indignant front, about to argue it. I said, what do you mean by my white privilege? She said, you in your own eyes are the German. You're not the Jew. And as soon as she said it, I thought she's dead right. Because nothing bad has ever happened in my life or in my family tree. So I'm not black, I'm not Jewish, I'm not a woman. I've never dealt with any kind of persecution. Therefore, I have no problem in standing up and telling a policeman that he's done something wrong.
Yeah.
But if you're black, would you? It's a different perspective, and it made me think quite deeply about how lucky I am to not have dealt with all this kind of stuff. And I remember two friends that I've got, well, one friend that I've got now, because one sadly died last year, but they were both sons of Donegal immigrants coming in from Ireland. And Celtic fans. I was never particularly football orientated. That's not true. At 17, I was a Rangers supporter and had a season ticket, so we always had that kind of banter between us, but it was very much at 17. And then I fell out of love with Rangers when I bought the pub, because nothing makes you neutral more than having a pub.
Yeah. Imagine.
And I hated the significance of kids running about the streets of Glasgow in an orange Rangers top. I just didn't like it.
Yeah,
And I didn't think from a business point of view it was a way to build a brand.
totally.
I can pretty much see all Rangers fans switching off here just now. But when Rangers adopted the "no one likes us, we don't care" mantra, that is like Trump appealing to his base. That's all you're appeasing as a base. You're growing no brand with that. You're not going out to people all around the world to say, come support us because nobody likes us. It just doesn't work. It's a very short-term way of thinking. And, even simple things like the two friends that I've got would tell me the stories of like Northern Ireland and what had happened with them and their families over there, which is not the story that I'd been told by the BBC News. Growing up, the IRA were public enemy number one. The UVF and the UDA, they were also bad guys, but they're not quite as bad as these guys. That's kind of the way it was painted. But the ability to hear something from another side of another perspective is where you build your knowledge, because their perspective will be no more right than the perspective that I have, but they see it differently. And I remember, I've been talking about this quite a lot recently, and I'll get it all wrong here because it doesn't really work unless you can demonstrate it. But if I stick something right in front of us just now in Roman numerals, and it says I plus xi equals x, is that statement true or false? So I plus xi equals x, so 1 plus 11 equals 10. Is that right or wrong?
Wrong.
Right. And you would stake everything on that being wrong.
Yeah.
But change your perspective. Where I'm sitting, it says x equals ix plus 1.
Yeah.
Because we're looking at it from opposite
Sides of the table.
angles.
Yeah.
But you would just have staked everything on you being 100% right without taking into account the way the other person sees it.
Yeah.
So it becomes a much more interesting way to live your life, to say, instead of fighting with somebody, saying to them, tell me how you see it. Because it's not how I see it, but tell me how you see it, because I want to understand.
Yeah.
And that's how we should deal with things and how we should speak about things, rather than you're wrong and I'm going to batter you, kind of thing,
Do you think that's just a society issue then across the board, not just like property business? It's just in
I
life.
think there's a real need for team belonging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And recently I've been writing music, which started during lockdown, and I've been in the studio recording an album. And one of the things that I'd written was, we need a team to belong, we need a chant and a song and a team we can blame that play the same fucking game. And that's basically how society works. It's like Brexit guys hate the Remainer guys, or independence guys hate the non-independence games, or Tories hate Labour, or Rangers hate Celtic. We're the same people.
Mm-hmm.
We're the same people with a different perspective. And once you can, if everybody could get that into their heads, it's a really strange thing, because Rangers hate Celtic and Celtic hate Rangers, but the Rangers guy and the Celtic guy meet each other on holiday in Benidorm and they're best pals.
So it's a 90-minute hatred, isn't it? Really,
Of course it is. And if it stays at 90-minute hatred, then it's not a problem. But 90-minute hatred now with the internet and Facebook and Instagram and everything is now there all the time. It's like the bullying thing for kids doesn't finish at 4 o'clock at school anymore. It follows you home. And it's the same with bigotry. And it's the same with racism. It doesn't just stop when you decide it stops, because you open up your Facebook and there it is.
Mm-hmm.
And right now the internet is an explosion in everything. And it's good and it's bad.
Do you think there's like this need to be liked because of social media?
For me or people in general?
People in general.
I think people have a need to show people how much better their lives are than they actually are.
100%. That's so true.
I think from my point of view, I think, and this is just me being quite open, is like, see, I think when you're first starting off doing something, you really give a shit what people think. And then see, as you become more proven and happy with yourself, you'd care less and less what other people think of you.
Well, yes, because you're content in yourself. You don't need the affirmation from them that you're a good guy. You know you're a good guy.
Yeah.
And I always remember my brother saying to me, I was shy at school. I had chronic anxiety. I still from time to time suffer from chronic anxiety. Like, for instance, I can't do this with a script. I can't do a video for anything with a script. I can't do a speech in front of people with a script. I have to just speak.
Yeah.
Because white noise and you can't see anything and I'll stumble over it and then everything just goes to hell in a handcart. And as I've got older, I've become much more able to stand up in front of people and say that.
Do you think because you can't read from a script, you've naturally developed to become a better speaker? Because even just meeting you, half an hour, whatever it was ago, you're good with words, you're good the way you come across, if you know what I mean? Do you think
I
that's
think you have an
impacted it?
authenticity,
Yeah.
which is back where we started. I mean, I'm perfectly able now to say to people, I suffered from anxiety, chronic anxiety, before we knew what anxiety was. There wasn't a word for it then. But I lived in a different world. I lived in a social world where you couldn't lock yourself in your bedroom. It was about people contact. So you had to develop your coping mechanisms very quickly. For me, that was developing a caricature of myself. It was developing Davy Hutton as opposed to who I actually am. So when I talk about Davy Hutton, he's almost like a different person.
Right. That's what I was going to ask you then. So, because you mentioned like the Jack Sparrow thing and you've had it all before the pirate and everything. So, is that like a different sort of character that you've got there? Is that how you dress? Is that how you act? Or is that Davy Hutton, quick sale soul guy?
Over a long period of time, like 30 years, that caricature that you've set becomes as much part of you as the other person. You grow into it. So you now get to a stage where I don't, think about it I don't think, what am I going to wear to shock somebody or impress somebody? I wear what I'm comfortable with.
Yeah.
Like yesterday I had a suit on. Today I've got my shorts and a t-shirt on. I was out doing evaluation before I came here. And it took me a long time to develop that confidence that if you are different in the way you dress, and a lot of it's because I've been self-employed since I was 20. I've never had a dress code. I've never had somebody say to me, you must wear this. So there is is it ego? I'm not sure what it is, but I won't go out the house unless I feel like me.
Right.
And today, this is what me feels like.
Cool.
Tomorrow it might be a tartan coat,
Yeah.
the top hat kind of thing. And I won't feel like I'm putting on a costume. But I've seen me drive 20 miles home to change my shoes because it didn't feel right. And it's like, I don't feel right, I don't feel right, I don't feel right. And if I don't feel right, I'm not performing right. And that might sound really egotistical, but I know when I feel right. And when I feel right, I know I perform right. And I know I'm just better.
Perform right in a work sense or just in general life?
In general life, but then, they're both the same thing.
Yeah, that's true.
But I don't, it's a difficult question to ask. What was that question you asked me there?
I've totally forgotten as well.
It was about
business or
it was about
life?
the way I
dress.
dressed.
Aye.
Yeah.
I just dress like me. Everything that you see is an evolution. It's not, I didn't just wake up one day and say, I think I'll start wearing eye makeup.
Yeah.
It was
It's
just
funny because, like, see, just on a more watered down version of that, sometimes I get out the house and I know I'm just in the office all day, so I'll have trackies on, pair of running trainers or something like that, Under Armour top.
See,
and
I'm never
I
like
already feel like you feel a bit like
I'm a piece of shit.
aye, a wee bit, you know, you're going in, you're trying to make thousands of pounds that day on deals or whatever, and you're just dressed in a trackie. And although it doesn't matter because you're behind a laptop all day, you still do feel a bit scumbag.
Totally know what you mean. Yeah.
I'm not like that though. I mean, like, if I'm in the house all day myself, the same process applies,
right?
because
Aye.
it's not about impressing somebody else.
Yeah.
And this is what I was going to say to you. If you dress differently, and I'm aware that I'm different. I don't feel different, but I'm aware because other people tell me that I'm.
Do you quite like that though?
I neither like it or
Yeah, just a bother.
it's not something I even think about. I never really particularly felt I had to follow a fashion. But if you look odd and you talk credibly and you know what you're talking about, then your credibility becomes magnified.
Yeah, 100%.
Totally, mate.
Because you're different from the other people. But what you have to be aware of, you know, to all you guys coming off the Property Academy just starting off, if you look odd and you talk a lot of shite, it magnifies the other way. You become an arse.
So true, but
It magnifies both ways.
Yeah. One of the big things that I wanted to ask you about was personal brand building. So somebody, you know, brand new into property, new into business, maybe they're young, you know, they don't have much direction. How would you go about in setting yourself apart from the competition? Because as you've mentioned, there's lots of people doing what we do now, but what would you do in terms of building a personal brand to stand out from the crowd?
You can't build a personal brand without promoting who you are.
Yeah.
And you have to promote who you are accurately. I've never ever thought about promoting me as a brand. This has become a relatively recent thing where with social media and everything, the brand becomes important. So, for instance, I don't post an awful lot of stuff on Facebook about, nobody gets a picture of what I had for my dinner or where I went on my holidays, or I'm not ego-driven that way. I don't need to show you how much better my life is than yours because it's not. But what you say, the political stance that you take on your personal page tells people who you are. So if you want to be, you know, one of the people supporting the guys that are rioting just now and ransacking Greggs and everything, then that has a bearing on your professional as well, because your professional and your personal are the same now. So much more comes out my personal profile than comes out the quick sale profile, for instance. It's just got a bigger reach.
Yeah.
The algorithms work better on your personal profile than the...
Totally.
That's one thing we say all the time, isn't it?
But you cannot go out and... Well, you can go out and fake it on your personal profile, but what you'll find is you'll lose your friends pretty quickly.
Yeah.
The ones that are not involved in property just think you're
Aye.
boring the tits off them and being an arse kind of thing. So you have to try and balance these things and understand that it's a necessary evil now, social media.
Totally. So see, just on that then, because something I want to touch on is just with the social media ads, personal brand, and a couple of your ads in particular, the semi one. And the have you seen the semi one? Aye?
Yeah,
aye.
and
then obviously the one that you done about the property sources of the world. Two sort of famous ads, I would say, that's still out and
Just
about there. So
a bad day that day. Somebody annoyed me.
is that right?
But again, they were done in one take.
Well, aye.
brilliant.
You know, if you speak to the radio people, we go in there, we do it in one take.
Aye.
We just go in there
That went mega viral, that one. Did you get a lot of business off that?
off the semi one. Or
No, well, both of them really, but more so like, you know, the property sourcer one, just having a big go at the sources of the world. Did you get like a lot of business? Was that just a really bad day? Somebody pissed you off?
Pretty much, it was a bad day. Do we get stuff off it? Well, you get tons of response on it.
Yeah.
Like, something coming off the radio, somebody's phoning in with a specific inquiry. Social media is somebody making a comment.
Yeah.
So you have to deal with a lot more traffic and a lot more responses and things on the social media side. But what I'm finding now is that it's becoming quite difficult now to tell whether it came from Clyde or Smooth or Hart or it came through Facebook or LinkedIn. They're all intertwined, but it's you know, radio world, they call it opportunities to hear. Well, the opportunities to hear are now on social and on the radio and in the press kind of thing. So it becomes really quite difficult. I've got. I don't think any one works better than the other, but they all kind of work in tandem. And you know what I would say to you is that we spend a fortune on advertising to earn not very much.
Yeah.
So if you spend £100,000 on advertising, it becomes, will that make me 120? Kind of thing. It's very difficult to go out and spend 100 grand on advertising unless you already have that established business. But when we started on the radio adverts, again, that was an evolution. Partly, this is the Davy Hutton that you see now. We started off with an advert that Clyde told us we should have, which was a nicely spoken Edinburgh type soothing accent with music playing in the background. You know, do you need to sell your home quickly? And I hated it. It sounded like a funeral plan.
It just wasn't you.
Advert. It just wasn't me. And I said, I want to do my own radio advert. And they said, no, we don't allow that. And I said, well, I'm not doing the advert then because I know what I want to say.
Did they approach you to do an advert then? Or did you go to them?
I went to them and said, I want to do my own advert because this doesn't work for me. And really, to be fair to Radio Clyde in that situation, they don't want people doing their own advert because people doing their own adverts tend to be shit.
Yeah.
You know, they're rubbish, and there is an obligation on the radio station to at least make the adverts listenable.
Yeah.
But if you're stumbling over a script or whatever, that's not what they want to hear. Now they love me doing my adverts, and I've done voiceovers for other people's adverts, but I knew I could do it. I'd done enough stuff in media to know that I could do this. It wasn't really what I wanted to have, was another personality-based business, but it's what I know. It's what I know how to do.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm sitting there thinking I'm going to go out there and publicise myself. I really don't have that ego that wants to see myself on the telly or hear myself on the radio. I never do. I never watch them. Like you talked about the podcast that you've watched. I've not seen it.
Yeah.
It's not the way my ego works.
Yeah.
But people seeing me on a video think that's who I am. I'm not. I'm actually by nature quite hermit-like. I don't really need social settings and people. I don't go to very many events. You get asked all the time by the radio companies to go to this, that, and the next. I never go.
Just over business then, really.
Pretty much. It's you know, it is brand building, but I don't think about it as building a brand.
Yeah.
It's like, so you're saying there, how would you start building your brand? And I never started thinking like that. It just became something which then got evolved into something else. And then eventually somebody like you says, you've built this brand, and you go, oh yes, I did. But it wasn't like, how do we start off to build a brand? It just came from authenticity, and you're interesting or you're not.
Yeah.
But I tell you, if you're authentic, you're always interesting. Even if you're the most boring guy on the planet, if you're authentically boring, I want to know what makes you tick. You know, I've got a friend who nobody wants to sit next to in the long haul flights because he knows everything about everything in a really boring way.
I don't listen next to you.
But I find him fascinating because he genuinely does know all this stuff. He's not bullshitting, he knows all this stuff. He's not telling you that to make himself look good. He's just a walking encyclopedia. and it's like, almost, you know, I don't mean this in relation to him, but you know, if somebody is really boring, I find that really interesting. Everybody has got something interesting. If you're prepared to say, tell me your story.
Yeah. No, that's true.
So, just before we sort of wrap up, I don't know if you've got any other questions, Matt, but so Davy Hutton now, what is the future for you in terms of your business, maybe even your personal life, anything like that? Get any plans on, any portfolio you have, like selling it on, retiring, anything like that at all? What's the sort of plans in the next 5 years, 10 years, whatever? Even
I don't know, to be honest. I never ever think about like any kind of retirement thing. It's not. I'm sure the day will come when I'll decide to go and do something else.
Yeah.
Just now I've been doing music stuff, we do the charity stuff, and as well as the Find Your Feet stuff, as well as the quick sale stuff. But the market's been really funny. for the last 4 years anyway, post-lockdown. And it's a situation that I've never seen in my time in property, where there's not very many properties on the market. And when that happens, prices should be going through the roof because there's more buyers than there are sellers, but they're not because there's no buyers either.
Mm-hmm.
That should never happen. It's one or the other.
Yeah.
So
what way do you think it goes then?
I've got no idea.
Yeah.
And like you, I'm in the position, if I want to buy somebody's house just now, there's a month in legals, or 48 hours if you listen to one of the videos online. Not my videos, I have to say. It takes 4 weeks to go through legals. Then I can't sell it for 6 months. So I'm predicting where the market is in 7 months' time.
Yeah.
And if you could tell me what that market is in 7 months' time, you're a better man than me, Gunga. Then it's almost impossible to try and predict.
Especially if you're doing any works to it as well, which could take another 6 weeks on top of it. Do you know what I mean?
Well, generally speaking, no, you're doing that in that 6 month
months,
period.
yeah, of course. Yeah.
So, but it's so difficult to.
It's funny because you said before you had a really good prediction about the 30% drop in the market, was it? At the time, maybe back then. And now you just don't know. Is that a bit of first for you? Can you normally see, by being in the industry so long, you can see the patterns and where it's potentially going to go? And now you just...
Pretty much.
This is a bit abnormal for you.
But from when COVID hit the scene,
Well, it went mental after COVID, though, didn't it?
Yeah, so it was something I was talking about last week and with Nick Ponty, that has COVID created a situation where people now stay in a property slightly longer than they used to?
Mm-hmm.
That they don't move quite as quickly as I'll just stay where I am, I'll batten down the hatches. Now I'm used to being here now, I know the neighbours.
Yeah.
Now I'm more settled in a neighbourhood. So because a 10% increase in how long people stay in their property makes a big difference to how many properties are on the market. If there's nothing on the market just now, the person in the big house that would normally be downsizing is looking at it and saying, the place that I want to downsize to isn't there, so I'll just stay where I am.
Yeah.
And last year, for 6 months of this year, I was thinking maybe the business just isn't there anymore. Maybe it's fundamentally changed. And you guys will have noticed it. I mean, the phones are not, regardless of what people tell you online, phones are not ringing off hooks.
Yeah.
And if you're forking out, £100,000 a year in advertising, at some point you've got to say, should I stop doing this?
Yeah.
Batten down the hatches like everybody else, or do we advertise our way through it and hope that it comes back? And then all of a sudden in July, our numbers went through the roof. Mm-hmm. And July should be the second worst month of the year.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's this year 70% of my businesses came through other people. So I think for me, having quite a diverse range of where stock's coming from seems to help. But I'm in the same mindset as you, where I'm not spending a huge amount on advertising. But quite often when I look at it month to month, I'm losing money. But then over the course of the year, I'll be making quite significant money off it, because maybe the 2 or 3 that I buy that year will have all came through it.
Well, I mean, for me, the key is to have your income multi-fractional. Yeah. So I've got a rental portfolio that I've built up over the years that brings in money. I've got no debt on that. We've obviously got the castle business that's out there. We've got the estate agency business. We've got the auction business. We've got the development side. And if you could get them all running perfectly at the same time, it's quids in. It never, ever happens. But, it's interesting what you said there, that, most of your business is coming from other people.
Yep.
None of my business is coming from other people.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know why it is, but never, ever have I been tapped up by one of you guys saying, do you want to buy this property?
Yeah.
Do you want to do a joint deal on this? Do you want to do... And I don't know why that is, other than the fact that maybe the whole property networking thing keeps it within the networking groups.
It's probably a lack of access to you, I would say, because David obviously got you through Facebook and we've seen you on podcasts and stuff like that, but I would just reckon it's probably just a lack of access.
See, I'm thinking I'm the easiest guy in the world to get in touch with.
I would reckon, I think it's people would just think Davy Hutton, there's no chance he'd be interested in one of my deals, you know?
But why would I not?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a guy phoned up.
But I didn't think you'd ever come on this podcast as well.
I
So
had a guy who wrote something on one of the quick sale posts, and it was, what kind of properties do you buy? That was the question. And I said, what have you got? And it was a 6-bedroom house in Lenzie or something like that. I said, send me your number. So the guy sent me his number and I phoned him. And he said, it's actually a client of mine's property. And it's valued at £850,000, but they're willing to take a little bit less. And I'm like, £850,000? I said, have you got any idea how much stamp duty, second property tax is in that? And he hadn't thought about it. I would imagine that he must have set himself up as an estate agent, got lucky with this one client, and then thought, how do I move it quickly? I said, there's 135 grand in stamp duty and second property taxes. I said, so before you start, there's £715,000 you're at.
yeah,
And you don't buy that kind of property. You'd have £750,000 sitting out for 6 months
Yep.
to make 20 grand. You know, there has to be significant profit on this. And what you should be doing is speaking to your client about an aggressive estate agency strategy, which I can do for you and cut you back. You know, you can have half the fee if you want. That's what we started off doing, was working for other estate agents, working it from the back and sharing fees with them. But bring it to me and we'll do it right. Now, you know, we won't rob you.
Yeah.
You know, again, it's part of the authenticity. It's part of the integrity part of it. Bring what you've got. We have got the money there that we can buy properties if you can't buy them. Then you don't have the situation of trying to offload it to somebody who's trying to get a mortgage, or who's trying to offload it to somebody else, or who's trying to get investors all involved in it. And, you know, the investor market, I don't understand it. I really don't understand what it is, because I'm not investing in anybody's property unless I've got title over that property. Why would I just give somebody the money for a property and let it be in your name? You know, it doesn't happen in the real world. So I don't really, would you not be better selling it to somebody and getting a split on the profit, or getting the sourcing fee, or whatever way you want to work it? You can speak to us and we'll listen. But it's interesting, just you saying most of your business comes that way and none of mine comes that way.
What would you say is your biggest challenge? Is it getting the stock on then?
Well, recently it's been getting stock on, but then that's been the same challenge for every estate agent.
Yeah.
You know, the numbers are significantly down on where they were pre-COVID, but also they're significantly skewed from area to area.
Yeah.
So areas that are money areas are doing okay. Areas that are not money areas are doing very badly. So not very badly, but they're stagnant. The brown bit of the Monopoly board is doing bad. The dark blue bit is doing good. And the reason for that is family money. Deposits can be got at. Properties can be bought for cash. These are the ones that are still doing significantly over home report value. But you go to East Kilbride or go to Cumbernauld, these are areas where people have to save up their deposit and they don't have that extra 10 grand or the extra 20 grand to go over the home report value. So on average, the figures can say one thing, but in reality, there's something completely different. Because if somebody wants you to buy their house, typically it will not be in the West End of Glasgow, it will not be in the South Side of Glasgow, it will not be in Newton Mearns. It will be in one of these areas that are not doing well, where the numbers and the percentages are completely different.
Yeah.
So when I go on with, you know, Nick's podcast, and Nick's very facts and figures driven. I have a lot of time for Nick's, good guy. But the facts and figures are averages, where I deal in pockets. I might be dealing in East Kilbride today, or, you know, Blantyre tomorrow, or Castlemilk the day after that, but very rarely am I dealing in the West End.
Yeah.
So my gut feeling what the market's doing is completely different to what the statistics say that it's doing on average. Because if the south side is outperforming home report values by 10%, and East Kilbride is going 10% under home report value, on average, the market's stable, but in reality, it's not. It's buoyant and unstable, if that makes sense.
Totally.
It's not something that I've really kind of articulated before. I'm just thinking about it as I'm speaking to you. But that's quite often what you've got to do. If you're going to buy somebody's property, you've got no real control over what area that property's in. You've got to find out very quickly, or else you make expensive mistakes. And I've made the expensive mistakes. But fortunately, at the time I've made the mistakes, the market's driven me out of it. But I'm not 100% sure that that's the reality of where we're heading.
Yeah.
I think we might be heading to a stable market.
Yeah.
Maybe a slightly downward kind of trajectory. But
no sort of crash or anything.
I don't think so, unless the banks wobble.
Yeah.
But what you're not seeing just now is a lot of bank repossessions.
Yeah.
And logic tells me that there must be a lot of people that are defaulting on the mortgage, because you've had all sorts of crises, from the Liz Truss budget to the cost of living crisis to the energy crisis. People must be struggling, but the banks are not taking these properties back. So why are they not taking them back? And one of the reasons might be that they have them listed on their balance sheets that have been worth 100 grand, but if they repossess them, they're worth 60 grand.
Yeah.
So therefore, the banks, if they start repossessing these properties, become less liquid, and then you get back into that cash crisis that once upon a time we were in, 2008. And it seems to me we've gone straight back into it, really, and really not learned an awful lot. And what they're at just now is maybe a kind of management of that. I don't know. I'm not bright enough to work that out, but something doesn't add up somewhere.
See, just on your rental portfolio, just quickly before we finish up, at what stage would you start holding on to stuff? One thing that me and David struggle with is, we're making good money sourcing stuff, trading stuff, flipping stuff, but there's no portfolio there for the long-term plan. So see, when you were getting started, you set up this auction company, at what point did you start thinking, I'm going to keep this? And also, why did you decide to go with no debt?
Well, I went with no debt because I had the money.
Yeah.
But I could have gone leverage.
Exactly, that's what I mean, leverage and buy 3 times more.
Well, because the 2008 crash taught us a lot, that if you're 70% loan to value funded and the market drops 30%, on paper before that crash, you were leveraged and were a millionaire a few times over. And like that, it just disappeared. Market drops 30%. The bank didn't lose any money. You lost all your money.
Yeah.
And it was a safety thing, back to the fear thing.
Yeah.
The fear thing's always been about, if I could just get to here, everything will be okay and I won't feel like this, I won't feel this anxiety. And it didn't cure it, so now I've got to get to there. And then there comes a point where you're older and wiser and you say, look, this is just the way I'm built. If I didn't have this fear and anxiety, I'm probably done. So therefore, having the fear and anxiety becomes a comfort and not a cross to bear, if you see what I mean. That's just the way I'm built. So that probably is what's driven me to do things, what drives me to do new things.
Yeah.
But I'm my own worst enemy at times, because I constantly get myself into a situation where I've got a business model that works very well, and then I get fed up and say, oh, I'm going to go and do it. It's not that I'm fed up, it's that I want to learn something different.
Yeah, totally, I can relate to that.
So I knew I could write. During lockdown, I decided I was going to learn to play the guitar, and it came from sitting talking to somebody about their house and them thinking they were skint, and me saying, you're not skint, you've got no mortgage on your house, you've just got no income. But if you sell your house tomorrow, you've got 100 grand in your bank. You can go with your Cashline card, stick it at the hole in the wall, and it'll say £100,000, something you never thought you would have. But you can't take a brick for your house to Tesco to pay for your messages.
Yeah.
And as part of telling the story, I'd said, apologies if you're one of these people that watches all these podcasts, because I'm told this story to death. But I said to the person, what is it you want to do with your life? And they said, I don't know. And that's what everybody says that's in their 50s or their 60s, because they've gone to work to earn the money, to pay the mortgage, to put food on the table, to bring the kids up. Then the kids have left home, and now it's their turn to dream, and they've forgotten how to do it. But the things that were your ambitions when you were 17, of you want to, get a job, start a business, meet a bird, have a family, buy a car, go on holiday, you've done them. Mm-hmm. So it now becomes more difficult to work out, what is it I want to do? Who is it I want to be? You've got to get a bit of paper and actually write down what you want to do, because it's no longer about money and profit. And I'd said to me, when I was 14, I wanted to learn to play the guitar. But I'm 52 now, this was 2020. I'm 52 now and I'm too old to learn to play the guitar. And as I said it, I stopped myself. I said, wait a minute. My son's 14 just now. He's 18 now, but he's 14 then. If he wants to learn to play the guitar, he'll be able to play it by the time he's 15. If I want to learn to play the guitar, I'll be able to play it by the time I'm 53, if I decide that that's what I want to do. Yeah. But if you start looking at it and saying, well, how much money is that going to make me? You'll never do it.
Yeah.
And therefore, you never gain the knowledge. So about a month later came lockdown, and I learned to play the guitar enough to be able to put a tune to what I was writing. And what I was writing was predominantly political, or it was mental health based, because it was stuff that I understood. And then I happened to meet somebody. You're allowed to go out for your walk, and I met somebody up the river who turned out to be a music producer. And he said, well, why don't you, when this is all done, why don't you come in the studio and we'll record it? I said, because I can't play well enough to record it. He says, no, but I can, and I know lots of people. And essentially we put like a band together for these recording sessions, which allowed me to record the album in the way that I wanted to record it. So it's not about me playing the guitar, it's my vision of what I wanted this to be. And I remember John Sparks, his name is, a great guy, also in property. But he said to me, what's the theme of this song, Davy? I said, well, it kind of starts off Peaky Blinders like, and then it moves into an 8-some reel, and then it's downstairs on the Titanic in steerage class, and they're all having a big hoolie, and they're all dead. And John's got as strange a brain as me. He didn't even crack a smile. He just said, got you. And then and then produces this track, which is exactly that.
Yeah.
It couldn't be any more, accurate to the description. Or this one is on the beach and all my pals are there and there's a big bonfire and everybody's playing, acoustic instruments and banging on bits of logs and things, and he just gets it. And that's the feel that it comes out. And so I'm learning stuff. And then it becomes, well, having done that, if I wanted to go and invest £500,000 into that album, could it make 600,000? Now, that's not what I want to do. It's not what I did it for, to make money. I wanted it to be credible.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be proud of what I've done, which is largely where I'm at. But that's where the business experience can then come in and say, if I, force feed you this with my £500,000 marketing budget, can I make profit off it? And that's essentially what the music industry does now. Because quality music you will not hear on mainstream radio stations. You'll hear single people, Kylie Minogue or whatever, but no bands are there anymore.
Yeah. Because
that's who the music industry makes money out of. So that's who they'll invest their money into, because that's where they make the most amount of money. And again, this is all knowledge that I'm gaining on a different kind of business, and it will make me no money, and I don't care.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But as long as it's credible feeds everything else that I do. Yeah. If the message that I'm putting out in a song resonates with somebody, maybe they want me to sell their house. I don't have this separation of all these different things that I am. They're all one and the same.
Yeah, it's all kind of interlinked to it. Yeah, cool. Brilliant. That's been brilliant, Davy.
Taught you nothing about property.
I feel like we keep going on and on. We need to get you back on at some point. But no, superb. Thanks very much.
You're very welcome.
Davy, man. Cheers, I appreciate it.
Thanks for watching, guys. Subscribe to our YouTube, please. It really helps us out. Helps us get guests on, like Davy here. Hopefully we can get you some really good guests in the future as well. Thanks for watching.